taking a few minutes to have some questions with me today. As you know, I'm the Pacific Commander, responsible for the U.S. military engagement for the Indo-Asia Pacific. Covers about a little over 52% of the globe and 36 nations. And so I'm sure you have plenty of questions. I'm standing by to take those. Thank you.
Cool. Could you please talk a little bit about the Islamic State blowback in your AOR? There's a story out today from Reuters talking about al-Qaeda-linked militants in the Philippines threatening to kill some German hostages over actions against the Islamic State. There's questions about recruitment of militants from Asia that are heading over to that region. Could you talk a little bit about that, and also about the arms embargo with Vietnam, steps that might be taken soon to ease that? What kind of weapons sales would you be looking at initially?
Well, on the question of ISIL and foreign fighters from the Asia Pacific, it certainly is an issue that we're paying very close attention to today. We're working very closely with Central Command to ensure that we can sense and understand from their perspective the flow of foreign fighters or aspiring foreign fighters that may be coming out of the Indo-Asia Pacific region. Our estimations today is there's probably been about 1,000 potential aspiring fighters that have moved from this region based on kind of our overall assessment. That number could get larger as we go forward, but certainly that's about the size of the magnitude that we perceive at this point in time. So what we're doing is we're working very closely with our allies and our partners, continuing to have a robust dialogue about how we sense and understand and share information about this particularly difficult problem. But I can assure you it remains high on our list of things to think about as we look at the future security environment in this vast region. Now, on the issue of that you've been talking about from a lifting of arms embargo on Vietnam, I'm well aware of the dialogue that's happening between our governments, or of the potential possibility of doing that, the dialogue that will be occurring inside of our own country and within our own leadership here. And those decisions on how much and will be done haven't been made yet, to my knowledge. However, it has been my perspective as the military commander that where we are with our relationship with Vietnam, that it would be a positive thing to consider the lifting of some of those restrictions that might allow us to provide better support to the country of Vietnam. That's in a very important region of the world that has significant interest in this part of the world, that has requirements to improve its own security and its own maritime domain awareness and situational awareness. So we look forward to hearing the decisions made by the governments, and I'm standing by to support those as necessary.
Thank you, Admiral. Just first to follow up, you said 1,000 foreign fighters from this region has gone to and fighting for ISIL. Do you know how many of them are from India? Do you have an estimate?
I don't have a breakdown in front of me now, Ali. I would say that the 1,000 number is a general number as we kind of scoop together what we've been hearing reported from the various countries in the region. So it's about 1,000.
And secondly, on India itself, after the formation of the new government, Secretary went to India last month. The Prime Minister is coming here next week, and next month the new Defense Minister is coming to the Pentagon for meetings. So can you give us a sense what's happening on the defense side between India and U.S.?
Yeah. Well, certainly we're very much looking forward to the Prime Minister's visit here. I think his official visit will be next week. That's a big milestone for both of our countries. You know, when I took this position, we had a stated rebalance to the Asia Pacific, and one of the central tenets of the Asia rebalance was for us to continue to develop a long-term, lasting security relationship or strategic relationship, which includes security relationship with India. And we've been embarked on that now through the past administration and through now Prime Minister Modi's administration. I thought it was a great sign that Secretary Hagel went right right early after Prime Minister Modi came into office, and that started the dialogue, I think, very positively for us. Now, we've had a a very good relationship between our militaries, both in all service lanes, Army, Navy, Air Force, for a number of, in fact, last couple of decades. And that relationship has been growing as we work together either bilaterally or multilaterally. So I think that all of what we're seeing portends well for the security relationship, the strategic relationship between our two nations. You know, one of the central focuses early on has been the defense trade initiatives, which will allow us to cooperate with each other on defense articles that would work for both of our security interests in favor of both of those. So I'm very optimistic.
You mentioned about this, again, going back to the 1,000 fighters. How did they get out of that area from that, because you know the border, like it's very difficult to fly out of, like it's very easy to fly out of Europe if you have a European passport, and you know, but from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, it's very, so, but there is a very strong human smuggling ring. So do you think that was used, or was it legal? Are you going to request these countries to put any kind of checks at their airports, anything extra you are?
Well, how they would actually get to Europe, I'd only be speculating as of right now. I can tell you that I believe most of them have been recruited via social media. Social media appears to be the place where ISIL has been, and that type of organization, and Al-Qaeda have been particularly effective at reaching out and finding these people who would have a tendency to want to go towards a terrorist organization. So how they actually got there, I believe that your overall assessment that it's somehow hard to move around globally is not correct. I think that through globalization and the interdependencies we have through business and commerce and everything else, that it's relatively easy for someone who wants to be able to move to a region such as Syria or Iraq to get involved. If they think about it and if they are enabled and if they have ability for someone to provide them the resources to get there. So we're working with all of our partners and allies to see how we harden our own countries and the region and the world against a threat like ISIL that knows no boundaries, knows no state boundaries, knows no legal boundaries, that operates stateless.
Admiral, there have been a number of reports of risky air intercepts in the Pacific recently. I know that you and a lot of your colleagues in the Defense Department have invested a lot of time trying to work with the Chinese to open up lines of communications, prevent misunderstandings that could lead to bad situations like this. Are you surprised or disappointed that these risky air intercepts keep happening in spite of that?
Well, I am disappointed. Am I surprised? I'm not necessarily surprised. I think that, you know, as I look at it, I mean, these are very, very serious things, so, and we must take them seriously between any nations where these occur. But the vast majority of interactions between U.S. and, in this case, Chinese, either ships or airplanes, are done safely and professionally, the vast majority. It's those outliers that concern us, and that ensuring that both sides of military leadership have good visibility on why it occurred, when it occurred, how it occurred, and how we prevent it from happening. So you know, we have developed over time mechanisms with the Chinese to be able to discuss these type of issues with each other. It's a consultative agreement that we have, and that meets periodically, and we bring these forward in those, and we have pretty direct dialogue about what we saw was unsafe and how they interpret it as being unsafe. And since the last one occurred, we haven't had any more. Does it mean we won't have another one? I hope we don't, but if we do, we will have a mechanism to address it. We have mechanisms, and we'll be forthright about it.
Are you also seeing more encounters at sea that concern you in terms of safety?
Well, I mean, generally we have more encounters at sea these days because the PLA Navy is more active. It's larger and it's more active. So just by mathematics, you're going to see them out and about in different areas more, and that doesn't bother me. But we do have a lot of interactions, and most of them are good. In fact, some of them are in multilateral forums we're exercising together, such as they did back in the RIMPAC exercise. As you know, at the Western Pacific Chief of Navy conference that was held in Beijing this year, all the Navy chiefs that went to that, including our CNO, which is John Greenert, signed it's called a CUES. You'll have to give them the exact what that means, but it's a close encounter a protocol that allows not only just the U.S. and the PLA Navy to operate, but any navies that can counter each other on how you respect each other's rights and privileges and sovereignty at sea.
On Ebola, we've been told that it's going to be about 3,000 people, personnel, that it can't all come from AFRICOM. There's just not enough support. Have you been talking to people about having people from Pacific Command go to help with the Ebola fight? Have those discussions been made yet?
Yeah.
Where are we?
Well, in my command, I have a fleet surgeon that's a two-star Navy admiral who coordinates broadly across all of OSD, across the interagency, and helps us understand how we can best support. If there's a need for us to send people from Pacific Command to help in the Ebola containment in Africa, then we would do that. We have not been asked to do that yet.
Admiral, Secretary Hagel recently nominated your successor. So as you're approaching the end of your tenure, looking back, can you talk about how the security environment in the PACOM AOR has changed? Are things more volatile and dangerous now, or do you think things have improved?
Well, it's a great question. It's probably something we could have about a 3-hour discussion on. I would say the good news is that, in general, peace and prosperity has been maintained in the Asia-Pacific, in general. Now, there's been a lot of changes in that environment. North Korea continues to be extremely dangerous, and I don't see an end state at this point in time for North Korea. Certainly we want them to be denuclearized, and we want peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. But that particular security issue remains kind of foremost in my mind, particularly as we look at the potential weaponization of nuclear material and the ability to put these things on road mobile missile systems that will make us all take a second look and say, well, what's this all about? Certainly the growing influence of China in the security environment and how they have been, the transparency of China, our ability to continue a good military-to-military dialogue with them, and for us to be able to continue to address the friction areas that we have with them in a way that leads to continued peace and prosperity rather than a conflict. And I'd say we've been able to do that. I mean, the history will look back on the last 3 years and say, yeah, it was a pretty peaceful time in the Pacific. Not without controversy, not without turmoil, not without friction. But hey, you're not going to get that ever in the future. I mean, the world is just too big and too interconnected and too complex to think that we're just all going to, all the problems and all the friction and all the competition in the world will go away. The competition is only going to get greater. So building security mechanisms that can withstand that competition and can flex to provide a security environment that prevents it from getting out of control will be particularly important in the Asia-Pacific, since the Asia-Pacific is the most militarized part of the world. So the stakes are pretty high for ensuring that it stays peaceful.
What are some areas that there's still mistrust, there's still disagreement between the U.S.-Chinese militaries, and there's more likely to be misjudgment and some incident like the one happened last month? So are there any efforts done by both parties to improve those, and how are those dialogues coming along?
Yeah. Well, I think the military in general don't distrust each other. I mean, we don't have that kind of interpersonal relationship. I mean, the distrust that would come would be because of the policies that we execute based on the policies of our own individual governments. And so that's where you have to look to see where the frictions are. And so there are, differences in opinion among at the highest levels of our different governments about freedom of navigation, about EEZs, about establishment of ADIZs, and those types of things that have popped out. So we haven't solved those differences, but we have, I think, are continuing a dialogue that lets us understand how to manage the friction that's caused by those differences. I mean, in simple terms, the U.S. believes that the security environment in the Asia Pacific has been good for everybody in the Asia Pacific for the last 10, 15, 20, 5 or 6 decades. And that environment, was based on our solid alliances that we have, our forward presence, and that the ability for every nation in that area to rise has depended on that security environment being like it has been, and that needs to continue in general into the future. I believe that the Chinese would tell you that they believe that security architecture is not the one that they see as best in their favor, and they'd like for it to be adjusted. So this will be the dialogue that has to go on in the coming decades.
Talking about personal, just a quick follow-up. Talking about personal interactions, how would you characterize your interactions with your counterparts in the
I would say they are professional, they're frank and friendly.
Just one more. There's some reports in China saying that U.S. submarines are increasingly active in the East China Sea and South China Sea. Why is that, and what those submarines
I haven't read those reports. And I wouldn't comment on them if I have. I haven't read those reports.
Admiral, to get back to Vietnam, obviously decisions are pending, but talked about the scope of that relationship, including the arms sales. I mean, presumably we're not doing, going to do reforger type exercises and sell them, high-end weaponry. But what's sort of the reasonable expectations for what you hope the U.S.-Vietnam relationship can develop to, rather than some kind of all-out military alliance you don't think is in the cards?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd say we're in the nascent early stages of talking about what type of military assistance we'd provide to Vietnam and why. And to have that dialogue in a different way, you have to have the discussion about whether you can provide them lethal aid or not. And so that dialogue's still going on, and that decision has really yet to be made. A lot of it will depend on what the Vietnamese government desires from the United States. They have many partners, and they have many neighbors, and they have and they have a growing number of security concerns. I think all the nations in the Indo-Asia Pacific have grown more aware of the security environment and the security requirements and the situational awareness that they need, particularly in their maritime and air domain. Many of these countries for history have been inward-looking countries, and now they have to look outward because of globalization and because of the impact of energy and food sources on their prosperity that may lie off their shores. And so, we're particularly interested in helping them understand where we can what's going on in their backyard and how they can better manage it. So I think that's kind of where we'll start.
Hi, Jen Judson with Politico. I'm wondering if you can still devote what you need to the Asia-Pacific pivot, given what's going on with ISIL and paying so much attention and devoting so much money towards that. If you could give me a sense of whether you think we can move forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's always this kind of fear that the United States just kind of only go from one place to the next. From a military perspective, even as a campaign like ISIL would be going on, our ability to remain forward and do the things we need to do in the Pacific will not be affected in any significant way. I mean, it could be around the edges, a type of surveillance airplane or an individual type of person we might send, but in general, I would discount that as any particular concern. Now, to the degree that our senior leadership is involved, I mean, we're going to have APEC here pretty soon. We're going to have the East Asia Summit here in Asia, and we're going to have the G20. It's going to be in Asia. So it's not like the world has just kind of walked away because of the Middle East. It's not true. And certainly the U.S. Joint Force, even in times of sequestration, which we've been struggling through, is still a global force and is still capable of pursuing the U.S. interest and the rebalance in the way that we've articulated. So I ask people on the military side of the rebalance in Asia Pacific when they say, well, you can't keep it up. I say, well, what is it we said we were going to do that we haven't done? And I don't think we can find anything.
Admiral Paulson from U.S. News, sir. Some senior officials have said that we're at war with ISIS in Syria and Iraq. All have admitted that this is probably going to be something that goes on for years. Shouldn't there, though, be a shift from a strategy like the Pacific Rebalance that was announced well before this threat took place? Shouldn't there be a shift of some of those resources back to this new war?
Well, I think it depends on the size and the complexity of it. I mean, if we have 1,000 foreign fighters coming from here, then this becomes a global perspective. You have to look at it in that direction rather than regionally. So, I don't know that thinking we're going to move massive amounts of forces from the Asia Pacific to be able to deal with a land campaign in Syria or Iraq that's against 30 or 40,000 very dangerous terrorists, but it's difference in scales of security issues. I mean, you just don't go from one security issue to the other. You have to, as a world power, as a global security environment, even all nations have to look at all aspects of it. And the Asia Pacific will remain important to the United States forever. That was was really the message in the rebalance, I think, was not only to the people in Asia, but to the American people and to military leaders that, hey, the future, much of the future security of the United States, our interest will be tied to what happens in the Asia Pacific. So even with a threat like ISIL, we cannot walk away from our responsibilities in the Asia Pacific. And the President just mentioned in his speech at the UN, we won't.
But with the sequestration and everything, can you, is it realistic that you will, rebalance to the Asia Pacific, will maintain or the presence in the...
Well, we've been through a couple of tough years of sequestration, and as what I just told you, I don't think there's something that I said that 2 years ago that we're going to do to rebalance that we haven't done.
Admiral, could you talk a bit about the enhanced defense cooperation with the Philippines and what bases you're looking to base forces out of and how you're going to cooperate with them?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. We've been having a good dialogue with our Filipino allies for the last couple of years since I've been in this job about how we would go forward with helping them improve their defense capability and helping us improve the alliance as we move forward in this alliance into this 21st century, and what types of things we could do to be able to improve humanitarian disaster response for them, other contingency response, how can we assist them in the CT world, counterterrorism world, and then part of that was for us to look at not U.S. bases in the Pacific. Let me reiterate again, the U.S. has no desire nor plans to build any U.S. bases anywhere else in the world. The plan with our Filipino allies was to look at where we might be able to put shared facilities where we would assist them in those facilities that would allow us to access jointly together with them to be able to address the number of things that are necessary to address in their buildup of their defense capability. So we haven't, there's been no real dialogue yet about places that we would do this. It's still very much, we're in the follow of the Filipinos here. It's their country, and they have made the initial movements to start forward in this agreement. We like what we see. It's broad and general at this point in time, and we will continue to have good dialogue, I think, in the future about where those places are. So I won't go into those now, but we're having that ongoing dialogue, more to follow.
Rob? Thank you, Admiral. Rob Gentry with TV Asahi. I wanted to follow up on one of your previous answers about the dialogue with China and the differences you mentioned on freedom of navigation, EEZs, and ADIZ. Specifically on ADIZ, you said that as a group, these issues have not been solved. On the ADIZ, has there been any movement towards any common understanding on how China organizes, implements, operates their ADIZ at all, or has there been no movement to this point? And then if also one other question is, do you have any recent concerns about any interactions with Russian aircraft, either with U.S. forces or with allies, specifically Japan or Korea recently?
Well, on the ADIZ question specifically, to my knowledge, we haven't had any direct dialogue with the Chinese about the establishment of that ADIZ. And if you roll that back at the time, of course, the U.S., our position once it was announced was we don't recognize it. We, militarily, we don't conform to it. We don't today. It just doesn't enter into the dialogue of our discussions with the PLA. I think certainly at the military level, it doesn't enter into it. It was never about them establishing ADIZ because, any country that has sovereignty, values its sovereignty, if they believe there's a need, could establish what they believe is an ADIZ. But the protocol that you should follow to do that, particularly if it overlays an area of tension, which this one particularly did with their Japanese neighbors, is that they would have had a dialogue in the diplomatic arena about doing this. And it would have been, we've done this, we had ADIZ discussions between us and the Soviet Union in the Cold War about how you manage those, because if you don't, what happens is you create friction, you create seams where miscalculation can occur if you don't think through it. And so that was the biggest problem, was it wasn't well coordinated, wasn't well announced, wasn't well thought through. And then the question is, well, why do you think you need one? Do you feel threatened? And so that dialogue never did occur. But as far as I know, there hasn't been any further dialogue with at least on the military side about that ADIZ or any future ones they may contemplate.
Ryota, you get the last question. And on the Russian.
Oh, I'm sorry. On the Russian question, certainly the return of the long-range aircraft flights that we haven't seen in any significant number over the last decade or so is concerning. And it's something that we watch very carefully. We watch the exercise regime that Russia conducts. We watch their surveillance flights that they conduct in Northeast Asia. And they don't have a robust force in the Pacific, neither a maritime or an air force at this stage. Whether they will upgrade that and make it larger in the long run, I don't have any idea. I haven't talked to them. But we are in good contact with EUCOM, who kind of has the main view into Russia. But it's certainly something that we're watching, and it's something that has changed in the security environment to some degree in the last couple of years. If you'd asked me this question 2 years ago, it would have been a different answer than I just gave you.
Why is it concerning?
Well, it's concerning because you have basically kind of Cold War activity with long-range bombers that are flying in the direction of U.S. ADIZ from Russian soil. And so these are things that we have to be concerned about as military people. We have to think about them and what that would mean to the security of the region and the security of our own homeland.
Last one.
Thank you. So thank you very much for having this. The 17th of September, the Chief Cabinet Secretary Suga of Japanese Cabinet announced that the GOJ tried to stop the operation of Futenma Air Base in 2019. And my question is, for the U.S. side, has it already been proposed by Japanese government? And I'd like to ask your position on that.
Yeah. Well, to my knowledge, it hasn't been proposed. It hadn't been proposed to me. We've said consistently that, first of all, that the Osprey MV-22 deployment to Okinawa, first of all, it's been very successful. It's been very safe, and it has contributed significantly to the security environment in a number of ways. And that for us to be able to fulfill our alliance responsibilities, that those MV-22s will need to operate at Fatima until there is an adequate replacement facility built at Camp Schwab, which is the direction that they're headed. So putting a timeline on it I assume if that's asked, will be incumbent upon the expectation that the replacement facility at Camp Schwab is completed and ready. So I can't comment on when that'll be, but my guess is that both countries would like for us to do that as fast as possible, and we hope that happens. Okay, thank you, folks.